Welcome to the first in a series of 4 webinars that the Indiana State DAT is hosting. This webinar is titled Discovering Your Why, and the purpose of this is really to help you connect with your why and give you some concrete strategies to help you connect with what that is, and then prepare you for success in the future by giving you those actionable steps that you can take after you've discovered your why, so you can start improving whatever it is that you want in life. And so you may have come here because you feel like you may be in a rut or you're treading water with your current employment. You could be here because you're struggling to find your purpose. You don't know what your purpose is. You don't know why you wake up in the morning, right? Or you could be here, you feel pretty strongly about what you're doing. You like your profession, you like why you're waking up every day, and you really just want to connect with your inner greatness and really take yourself to that next level. So wherever you are on the spectrum, whether you're feeling like you're treading water or you're ready to take the next step in your individual path for greatness, this presentation will hopefully add value to your life regardless of where you are on that spectrum. This will be an interactive webinar, so if you have the ability to either have a pen and a paper around to take some notes, to jot some things down for you, or if you have the ability to have a split screen up so you have a Word document so you can type in some notes, again, for you to take home after this webinar is over, so you can really think about some of these things and put them into action. Because that's really the next step in this whole process. Is we're going to give you some great information today, and what 99% of the world won't do is take action on that. And so preparing yourself for success now by when we have these activities and these prompts, to simply jot them down, to remind yourself in the future that, yeah, this webinar added value to my life and I need to take action on that now. And that's where we really start. So I'm Dr. Kenneth Games. I'm an associate professor and the director of clinical education in the Doctorate in Athletics Training program at Indiana State. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about, and one of my purposes, is to challenge the status quo in athletic training, challenge the status quo in life, by inspiring others to do the same so that they can find their voice. And that's really why I'm presenting on this topic. That I could have picked any topic in the world, and I chose this topic of discovering your why. Some of you may have read the book Start With Why or Find Your Why by Simon Sinek. Some of these concepts are familiar to that, but it goes beyond what is in the book. And if you've read the book, that's great. It's a great foundation. And hopefully we're going to take the next step on how to bring some of those things to life. So pretty simply, your why is your purpose, right? That's at the most basic level, right? What is your why? Your why is your purpose. Your why is the reason you get up in the morning, right? I wake up every morning because of whatever your why is, right? And your why is really the why behind you, the why behind the reasons you choose your actions and your choices throughout the entire day, right? So everything in life should be intentional, and it can be intentional if we're living from our why. However, unfortunately, we live in a world, right, where we get caught up in the what we do or how we do something as opposed to why we're here, right? How many of you just say yes to yourself if you feel this? You feel like you wake up in the morning and your alarm clock goes off because you have to go to work or because you have a different obligation, right? Many of us at some point or another in our lives get into this trance, right? This trance of unworthiness, this trance of going through the motions. We start to move and act like robots, and we just wake up because I have to be at my job at 8 a.m. and I need 45 minutes to get ready, and to get ready and to get to work. So I should set my alarm for 7:15. And so the reason you get up is to go to work. And there's nothing wrong with that, but The challenge with that is it's self-limiting, because now you have gotten yourself in a habitual pattern of letting someone else's schedule control your schedule. And that can be a huge drain on our emotional and intellectual resources, and where we start to get into this pattern of kind of trading in our ideas for a paycheck, or our ideals and our dreams for a paycheck. And when you find your why, and you move through this process of taking the actionable steps after you find your why to live your why, you may still get up in the morning to go to work, right? Like, the society that we live in requires us to make some sort of income in order to provide whatever we deem necessary for ourselves and for the people we love around us. However, the reason you wake up is not to go to work. The reason you wake up is your why, or the reason you wake up is your purpose. And that's really the transition, right? Because your why is three-dimensional, right? It's not only what you do, it's how you do it, and finally that last layer is why you do it. Too often we are living in this one-dimensional world of what I have to do, or what I am. I am an athletic trainer, or I have to go to work. So we're living on the surface level, when on the outside, if we're living from our why, it still may look like you're an athletic trainer, and it still may look like you are going to work, but the purpose behind that is completely different. And you're able to, again, live this purpose-driven life, which all of your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, and your actions align with that why, and you become unstoppable, right? You become the person that you've always dreamed of becoming. You've become that person who you would say, I wish I could be like that, or I wish I could do that, or if I had more time, I would do this. If I had more money, I would do that. You start to break down those barriers, and you start to live in alignment, which opens up so many opportunities for you to take advantage of your giftedness and your specialness that each one of us has. But like I said, the noise of the world and the world we live in today sometimes distracts us from finding our why. And some would argue that it even is built so that we don't find our why, or it's built in a way that keeps us from finding our why, because if we find our why, we may not be as compliant in the larger picture of employee, employer, right? You're going to do this task for me, I'm going to pay you to do that task, right? It disrupts that relationship, which is really empowering from the individual perspective, but it can be quite frightening from the larger structural perspective of specifically the American workforce. So when we look at your why, there are several things that your why is, right? And I want to talk before we get into there's three simple steps and three actions that you can take to help find your why and discover your why. But I want to spend some more time talking about your why. It doesn't have to be complicated, right? Your why can be as simple as one word, or one sentence, or maybe a sentence and a half, or a sentence with a couple dependent clauses in it. If you get much longer than that, your why starts to get fuzzy, and you are probably sprinkling in some how you want to live your life, or what you want to do in your life, which really distracts from the why. Why are you here? Why do you wake up in the morning? Why do you do what you do, right? And so if you notice that it gets a little longer than a word or a sentence, or maybe a sentence or a compound sentence, take a step back and reevaluate that. So your why does not have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be this thing that you spend months or you spend years trying to discover, right? It's not like the Holy Grail that you're going to go off on a journey for 7 years and try to find. It can be pretty straightforward and simple. The other thing about your why is that your why doesn't need evidence, right? Your why is not something that has to have a physical space in this world, right? Because if you've been living a life of what, or you've been living a life of how, you have created a lot of evidence for what and how, but you've not created evidence for your why. So if you're not living in your why, it doesn't make any sense that we would have evidence for our why. So we can, and this is one of the steps that we'll talk about later, is there are patterns in our lives that we can gain perspective on that may help us affirm our why. But fundamentally, you don't have to be doing any of those things, or you don't have to have any evidence to support your why. For example, if let's say your why is to inspire others, right? That's my why is, it's not my why, but a why is to inspire others. You don't need to be an inspirational speaker. You don't need to be an inspirational leader. You don't need to have any positional authority. You don't need any of those what's or how's that the world says are necessary in order to have your why and start living in your why. And that is incredibly empowering. And that also may feel scary because we look around and you're like, well, I don't know what my why is. Like, I don't know why I get up in the morning, because I want a paycheck, and that's the life I'm living, and that's the life I'm used to. And I don't know anything else. So how do I even start? Or why do I even start? Or where do I go from here? And oftentimes that first evidence comes from our soul, right? It comes from that inner voice that we all have, right? And this leads me to this next point, and that is that your why is not a question of discovery. It's a question of choosing. So we all have our why within us, right? We all have our why within us. We have our natural tendencies in which we are born with, and then as we grew up, we had some sort of shared experience or some sort of life experience which reaffirmed and shaped what our why is. But our why is already within us, right? It's already there. And it's not, you don't have to go on this quest. We all have the why without question. Every single one of us has a why. And the empowering part of this is that we have the power to choose what that is and why. We have the power to choose what our why is and why our why is ours, right? And the tricky part comes in, though, with ensuring that the why that we're choosing for ourselves is our why and not the world's why, or not what the people we care about's why. Again, I mentioned this noise, right? I mentioned this noise that fills our world, right? You should be this, you should be that, you shouldn't do that. All these expectations, right? I'm going to use an athletic training example because I'm an athletic trainer. There's the expectation that quantity equals quality. So the more time you spend at work, the more time you spend on the grind, the first one in, last one to leave, the better of athletic trainer you are, right? And so you may say something like, my why is service. And this is how I live my why of service, by being the first one in and the last one out. Service may very well be your why, but are you choosing your why for you, or are you choosing the why because of your vocation, right? And I think we'll talk about this in the next slide a little bit, but your vocation and your why are not necessarily related. So it's empowering that you can pick this, right? If everyone closed their eyes right now, and I want everyone to write this word down. If I said, why are you here? Right? Without thinking, why are you here? Write that word down. Why do you wake up in the morning? One word is probably coming to your head right now. If it didn't come immediately, it's starting to float to your head now. Pick that word, write that down, put that on a sheet of paper, let that marinate, let that float in space, in the space of your consciousness for the rest of this presentation, right? It may have just been a thought, or it may have some other power. So use that first question, just what do you think your why is right now? You're choosing that. And that took 5 seconds. the last point with your why is that when you live in your why, you become unstoppable, right? Once, like, when you are living in your why, no one can stop you, no one can knock you down, no one can take that away, right? And the first step in living your why is finding your why, right? Or discovering your why, or choosing your why. And then the subsequent steps are aligning your why with your thoughts, with your feelings, with your behaviors, and with your actions. When all of those things become aligned, you become unstoppable. If one of those, if your why becomes more aligned with your thoughts and feelings, you're going to improve. But if you can get all four of those in line with your why, no one can stop you, and you will have so much more to give to the world while your cup overflows. Right? I love how the power of your why, one word, one sentence, one simple thing, has the ability to transform your life if you're willing to do what most people aren't willing to do, and that is to live through courage and live your why and align your thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and actions, and have an incredible force moving forward with you. You can achieve anything you want in your life if you can get to that place. And that is an aspirational goal. I don't know if I'm there. I don't know many people who are there, but the few people who I've met in my time who really have this sense of alignment in all of those aspects of their life, and it comes back to their why, they're radiant. They are full of energy, and they give themselves, right, without expectation of return, and they're not pouring from their own cup, right? They're overflowing, and they're giving those around them the extra. So their cup is always full. Their cup is always full, and they give away the extra because there's no more room in it in their cup. And it's a really special thing to be around those types of people. So we've talked about what your why is. Now let's talk about what your why is not. So your why is not a job. It's not tied to your vocation at all. You can have any job in the world, right? That may or may not be aligned with your why, right? Jobs often happen by circumstance or opportunity, not necessarily your why, right? And I think that's really critical, because oftentimes we look at things and say, I'm a healthcare provider, and so I must, I serve people. That's my why, and that's what I do. I am an athletic trainer. I am a healthcare provider. I am this what, right? But if your vocation or your job, which is a what, does not align with why you exist, why you are here, why you wake up, then there's going to be some tension. There's going to be some tension in that space. However, if you choose to leverage your why, right, and leverage that in a positive way, you can improve any vocation. You can improve any job. So again, another why is I want to be a voice for people who don't have one. Right? That's another why. Like, to be a voice for a voiceless. That's another one that I've come across. And if you're an athletic trainer, right, you may, and you're operating in a way that's not aligned, you may choose not to say things when you know that the patient that you're working with really needs an advocate, but you're afraid, or you don't want to lose your job, or you're afraid of getting yelled at by the coach or by your administrator or whatever that is. Right? That creates some tension in your life when you don't necessarily have to change jobs, right? You have to reaffirm your why to be a voice for the voiceless and live in that space and say, I'm going to be a voice for the voiceless. And then you translate that to your vocation and to your job. And then if and when the opportunity presents itself for you to live your why through your vocation, then leverage that and thrive in your job once you discover your why, right? And it's a way to externally affirm your why with the world. And so the world knows what you're about. If your why is I want to be a voice for the voiceless, and yet you never behave in that way, the world doesn't know that you're an advocate. And therefore, opportunities for advocacy, opportunities won't come your way because no one knows that that's who you are and why you move and wake up in the morning. Your why is not a feeling. I think this is where I think the Start With Why book by Simon Sinek and this presentation deviates a little bit, right? Your why isn't a feeling, right? When we're finding our why, so today and the next couple days, as you're starting to find your why and you choose your why, you'll feel something. You'll feel a vibration. You'll feel a resonance. You will feel in line with the words that you are saying, the words that you are thinking, the way you interact with the world. However, once you choose your why and you have that feeling of resonance and energy, there may be days that you don't feel it all the time. There absolutely may be days that you don't feel it. Just like the example that I gave of the athletic trainer whose why is to be a voice for the voiceless. If she is living in a place of fear where she's afraid to get yelled at, or she's afraid to lose her job, or she's afraid of any of these other consequences that may happen if she chooses to advocate and be a voice for the voiceless, it may not feel like she's in her why. And that's where each individual has the responsibility to choose their why and say, I know I don't feel like I'm in my why right now, but right now I'm going to choose to live in my why. And so it is a feeling at the beginning. And then when you start to take action on your why, some of the limiting beliefs that we've been carrying with us for most of our lives start to creep in. And that feeling, that resonance, and that noise gets louder. So, or the resonance gets lower and the noise gets louder, and it's hard to hear our why. And in those cases, we need to, again, check ourselves and choose our why so we can take action on that. And our life is an interpretation, right? Life is neutral. Right? Nothing is good or nothing is bad. Life is life. And when we apply meaning to life, that's like life is life. If it just happens, right? It's not good or bad. However, we apply the meaning to life. And what this means is that we are in control moment to moment. So if we don't feel we are living in our why, we don't feel our why, we have control. We can choose to think about our why. We can choose to behave about our why, right? And our interpretation of getting reprimanded as bad is simply an interpretation. And the moment, as Chris Lee says in this quote, the moment you interpret, you become the interpretation, right? So the moment you interpret, it's not that you think about the interpretation, you become the interpretation. So the minute you say, I'm a bad person, or I'm going to get in trouble if I advocate, you've become a troublemaker if you live your why, right? It's a subtle difference. It's not like I could be. It's you become that interpretation. And most of us don't want to be a troublemaker, right? Most of us have goodness in our heart, and we don't want to be of disservice to others. But so the way to spin that around is I have the opportunity to advocate, right? That here's a situation. If I advocate, I become an advocate. If I interpret it as, if I have this conversation, I'm going to get in trouble, you become a troublemaker. Same situation. A patient is having a hard time and they're not going to be able to participate in sport activity for a week. If you have this difficult conversation, you become a troublemaker, someone who's a pain in the butt, then you become a troublemaker. if you view this as I have an opportunity to advocate, you become an advocate. It's all in our mind. And when we understand this, again, this is empowering in and of itself, because we take back some of that control in our life to understand that the control is just between our ears. And no matter what happens, life is neutral. But how we apply meaning to that will really determine the path that we take in life. And a last point here, no one's why is better than another. We're all chosen. We are all extraordinary. We are all gifted. We are all enough. What we need to do is learn to leverage our specialness and our why to give more collectively to the world around us. Right? So I think this is a message that everyone needs to hear, because we live in a world that tries to tell us that we aren't enough. We live in a world that tells us not to be special, not to be extraordinary. We live in a world that pushes us towards average. And that's not why we're here. Every single one of you are chosen. Every single one of you are extraordinary. Every single one of you are gifted. And every single one of you are enough. I'd like you to do this activity with me. And this isn't for now, this is for later. But what I would like you to do is take these 4 words: chosen, extraordinary, gifted, and enough. Write that down on a sheet of paper now. And then take a Post-it note and put these 4 words. You are chosen on one Post-it note. You are extraordinary on another Post-it note. You are gifted on another one, and so on and so forth. You are enough on the final one. And what I want you to do is hang that in your bathroom, or maybe on your computer. If you look at your computer regularly, put it on your mirror, wherever you put it, on the door to your athletic training facility, put it on the door to your classroom, wherever you're going. Remind yourself every day that you are chosen, you are extraordinary, you are gifted, and you are enough. And remind yourself of that giftedness. And then just do that for 7 days. Notice how your energy shifts, right? And as we move forward with choosing your why, we have a tendency to want to compare. And this why is better than that why. And that's just not the case. Every single one of us have our own specialness, and every single one of us have our own why. And if we all have our why, we can use those collectively to collaborate and leverage them to give more to the world around us. And so I would like to shift the conversation here from discovering your why to choosing your why. And as we talked about what your why is, it's a matter of choosing. And the first thing, and we have the power and we have the privilege to choose what our why is. It's not this long journey that's going to take 6 months or 7 years and it's going to bop you on the head, right? It may. Usually when you discover your why, it's following a traumatic event or having to go through some trauma in your life. But we can avoid some of that pain by choosing our why right now. And so I want to move into the 3 steps that we can take to choose our why today. So the first step is to look for patterns in our life, right? Another way to put this is to reflect. Right? The first thing we need to do is to reflect on our life and to reflect on patterns in our life. We all have our own natural tendencies, and we all have our unique talents and special talents, and we have shared experiences that we've had with those who've grown up around us, like our family or our friends or the people from our town. And some of these patterns start to show up over and over and over and over again. And those patterns have something to tell us. So to start this process, we really need to look for patterns. So again, if you have a sheet of paper out, we're going to do a couple of activities next. So where to look for the patterns? That's the question that I get asked pretty regularly is, how do I do this? There are several ways we can do this. What we really want to go back to our childhood, before we had the expectations of the world placed on us, right? When before we as humans had the intellectual capacity to interpret those expectations and what those meant to me. So go back to your childhood. If you were growing up, you always played, when you played imagination, you were always the caregiver, or you always played mom, or you always played dad, or you always played the teacher, or you always played the protector, or you always played whatever that is, right? Look for patterns in your life, right? And all of us can have those. Maybe we've forgotten them, or again, maybe our adult expectations have placed shame and guilt on those patterns that we had as children, and so we try to forget them and move away from them. But if we can spend some time to ourselves and reflect on our childhood, what were those things that brought you joy? Where, just like this child in this picture, like, we all have those moments in our lives, and many of them we remember fondly. Maybe it was playing sports. Not the act of playing sports, but the feelings you got when certain things happened in sport, or something was achieved. And not the act of playing house, but the roles that you embraced while you played house, or or not when you played with your imaginary friend, but how did you play with your imaginary friend? Like, what was your imaginary friend's role? What was your role? Were you always the one that was saving your imaginary friend from danger? Were you the one that was always just intently listening to what your imaginary friend had to say? Right? Or look at the playground. What types of roles did you take on as a child on the playground? The second place we can look are moments of joy and connection, right? In our lives, what were moments that we experienced pure joy, right? These moments may only be fleeting. They may only be for a couple minutes at a time, but those really special moments in which we're able to let go of all the expectations and live in this place of joy, of light, of happiness. Why were those moments joyful? So once you've identified a couple of those, so you should be jotting these things down, these ideas as I'm talking about them. Once you've identified those moments, after this conversation, spend some time and think about why. Why did those moments bring joy to you? Were you in alignment? Were you celebrating someone else? Right? That's another pretty common why, is I want to celebrate the achievements of other people. Right? If that was what brought you joy, maybe that's a hint. What made that moment different than other times that you were just happy? Right? So those moments of pure joy, what made those moments different? Maybe it was another person. If there was another person involved, think about your relationship and the roles you have with that other person. How are they helping you feel like your best self? Or how are you helping them feel like their best self? And you can look at these roles and situations regularly. And what you want to do is, even beyond your childhood and moments of joy, even looking into your adult life and jobs and your vocation, what sorts of situations and roles do you find yourself in regularly? Right? If you have a large family, are you the peacemaker? Are you the negotiator? Are you the instigator? If do you all at work, do you find you're the person that people come and talk to when they have a problem? Do you find that you're the person they want to come talk to when they have something joyful to share? Right? This may be, maybe you find yourself in a leadership role pretty regularly, right? Maybe you find yourself in a scribe role, or a caregiver role, or an advocate role. It doesn't matter, right? But look at those patterns. And now the key point here, right? This is the key point when you look at your adult life in terms of roles and situations. You want to make sure you actually enjoy those roles. Right? If you're like, man, I always find myself being the secretary, or I always find myself being the scribe, and I really don't like it, then maybe that's not your why. Those are just results of your vocation. So if you enjoy those things, and you're actively, voluntarily choosing those, perhaps, again, those can be things that can help you choose your why in an informed way. So again, just kind of mark this in your notes as something to come back to, something to reflect on. Maybe you have a couple of notes jotted down right now, but after we leave this conversation, to come back and really dive deep into this. The second action, right, after we've reflected, is really to develop our own self-awareness, right? We are all sacred, right? Every single one of us are gifted, and we are sacred beings. Uh, However, the noise of the world is constantly pulling us away from our center and away from our own self-awareness. To choose your authentic why, we need to strengthen the self-awareness skill. And that's exactly it. Self-awareness is a skill that can be taught, and self-awareness is a skill that can be practiced. And if we look at what self-awareness is, it's really the conscious knowledge of one's own characters, feelings, motives, and desires. Right? This is why we do what we do, right? Which makes sense when it says, when we're talking about choosing your why, understanding your character, your feelings, your motives, your desires, right? That's has to be a critical piece, right? So we've collected all this information from reflection. That's step one, and now we need to apply meaning to that through self-awareness. And a practice that I like to do is called gratitude, meditation, intention, request, gratitude. And you can see the pattern there, right? So on the left side, under the purposes, those are the broad 10,000 foot purpose. And the action is on the right side. So I start off this, and I do this as part of my morning routine. I have a larger morning routine that I do every morning, and that's a topic for another time. But this is part of it, and it takes about 10 minutes every day, 15 minutes every morning to do. So the first step is to express gratitude. So I have my journal, and I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for in the moment, and I write why I'm grateful for them. 3 things that I'm grateful for in the moment and why I'm grateful for them. The why is critical. If you simply write down coffee, my bed, and a warm house, and you don't say why, you're missing the connection. And the third part of the gratitude is to spend 5 seconds, just 5 seconds, on each one of those and feel it, right? Feel and understand that there are some, that I could lose this at any second, that there are some people who have never experienced this, and there are some people who are losing the ability to experience this as you are reflecting on that. The second action that I take after I do this gratitude is a meditation. I want to clear my mind. I want to get quiet with myself so I want to clear out the noise. And this, I use Headspace, right? There are plenty of apps, or you can self-guide yourself and through meditation if you're confident with that. And in that meditation, I try to separate myself from the noise. I have a lot of things going on in my life, my family, my work, my side hustle, all those other responsibilities that happen with being an adult. And for 10 minutes a day, I separate myself from that, and I move into this space where it's me, it's Kent, and no one else is allowed in. And that's okay. I can take 10 minutes for myself every morning. And and in that space, you quiet the noise and amplify yourself, right? And after I've amplified myself and quieted the noise, I set my intention, right? Thinking about, and maybe this intention can be anything, but I typically do it for my intention for the day, right? I set my intention. Who am I choosing to be today? Who am I choosing to be today? That I start with that question when I set my intention. And I say, my 3 mainstays are: I want to be giving, I want to be loving, I want to be kind. Maybe your intention during this process is, I want to, and you've resonated with your why, right? I want to be an advocate. I want to listen. I want to challenge the status quo. I want to inspire others to feel empowered. I want to be of service to the world, right? Whatever those things are, write it down, if writing it down is brings it to life. If it stays in your head, it stays in your head. Once you write it down, you are providing evidence for yourself that you've committed to this. The next thing I do is I request, right? So I request anything that may come up. I'm sorry. It may be it may be I'm asking for strength. It may be I'm asking for guidance. And this does, this is prayer. This is asking. This is requesting, right? It doesn't matter what you believe in: big G, little G, lots of G's, the force, the awakening, vibration, mathematics, coincidence, the universe. Whatever that is that you believe in, right? The requesting part is making, and maybe it's you believe in yourself, right? It's making a request to the higher truth that all of us are a part of, right? Whether you choose to experience that through big G, little G, lots of G's, or you choose to experience that through the universe or vibrations or frequencies or yourself, it's sending a request out into the universe. So whatever that is, or whoever that is, can hear that. And I wrap up this self-awareness exercise with another 3 things that I'm grateful for, and again with why I'm grateful for it, and then reflecting on it for 5 seconds each one, with kind of the understanding that it could be taken away at any moment. Some people will never experience this, and people who had it may have lost the opportunity to do it in the time I've been reflecting. And this activity really helps align myself for the day, and especially when you try to when you're searching, or when you're choosing your why, having this strong sense of self-awareness really is critical to helping you take the next step, which we'll talk about. Now, I want to challenge all of you, and the only person that's going to hold you accountable is you. I want you to do this for 7 days. So gratitude, meditation, intention, request, and gratitude. 7 days, wake up 5 minutes early, 10 minutes early from what you're used to doing, and practice this activity. You don't need to go buy it and buy a journal. You can do it on some scrap sheets of paper for the first week, and feel how much more you're aligned, and how you're behaving, that your actions are aligned with your thoughts, and your thoughts are aligned with your feelings, and your feelings are aligned with your behaviors, and all of that starts to be aligned with who you want to be. And then your why is like yelling at you right in the face and saying, just pick me. Try this for 7 days and see where you're at. I would love, my social media is at the end of this. I would love if you do this challenge to reach out to me at next Tuesday and let me know how you're feeling after those 7 days. And the last thing here in choosing your why is to declare it. After you've reflected, after you have become more self-aware, now you get to do the fun part. This is so much fun, right? And it can be scary too, but it's a lot of fun because you get to choose your why and declare it to the world. Declaration is a sign to the universe and the world we live in that you are choosing your why, and that you are ready to start living your why, right? So after you've done some reflection, after you've started to develop that self-awareness, like I said, if you've reflected and then you do this activity for 7 days, and by the end of those 7 days, you'll be surprised at the why that's just standing in front of you, that's just begging to be picked, like the kid on the playground who's like, pick me, pick me, pick me. And too often we turn our head and pick someone else that's not who we actually need in our team, instead of picking the kid that's really excited and really enthusiastic to be with you on your team. And so the declaration piece is fun, and sometimes it's scary because it may not be what other people's expectations of you are. And to declare your why, it's a really simple activity, right? After the first 2 are critical. You have to reflect and you have to be self-aware. If you've done those 2 things, this last piece is simple. Write this pattern down. So in a week from now, or maybe even later tonight, if you're already pretty self-aware and you can reflect pretty quickly, you may already have that why bubbling up inside of you, right? And you may know it's there and you just need to choose it, or you may have chosen it and you need to reaffirm it today. And so the pattern and the sentence I want you to put in your notepad is, my why is blank to create blank. So my why is, whatever that is, to create whatever you want to create, right? For example, my why is to challenge the status quo, to inspire others to take action on their life. That's what my why and what I hope to do with my why is. And so, yeah, write this down, declare it. And after you've declared it, share it with the world, put it on social media, let people hold you accountable. And because it shouldn't be that hard to hold you accountable, because you're living in your why. But you'll be tempted not to live in your why, which is why you need accountability with a community of supporters around you. Put it, again, if you print this out or you put it on a sticky note, put this on your mirror or your computer screen or the door into your classroom or whatever, into your athletic training facility, whatever that is to you, that you constantly walk through or walk by, to reaffirm to yourself what your why is and why you're doing your why. That seems pretty simple, right? Or it seems pretty easy. It's not easy. Like, that's it, right? The three things you have to do are look for patterns in your life through reflection, develop self-awareness through any means necessary, but I gave you a pattern that's a good development for self-awareness. And finally, you get the opportunity and privilege to declare your why. And it is simple, but it's not always easy to maintain. Once we choose our why, that's only the start of where we want to go. Because now we have to reaffirm that why. We have to live through our why. And we need to protect our why from the noise that we are constantly being bombarded with every single day. Some of you may feel really empowered right now, and I hope you do. I hope you feel the sense of empowerment that I am in control and that I can take control of these things in my life. And I can live through my why. And then the moment you get off of this webinar, you go and you're bombarded with all of these things, and all the expectations start flooding back, and it's almost like today didn't even happen. This hour of connectedness didn't even happen, and it gets washed away. This is where the work of reaffirming and living your why really takes place. And this is what, again, I mentioned this earlier, but this is what 99% of the world doesn't do, because they fall back into their habitual patterns. And I think it is possible for every single person on this planet to live their why every single day. But it takes work. It takes work. It takes courage. It takes risk. It takes overcoming your fear. It takes feeling your fear and doing it anyway. And most of us turn away when we reach our boundary of what our perception of uncomfortable is. It's not about getting outside of your comfort zone. All of you are here. You took a risk. You were probably already out of your comfort zone. The next step is to move outside of your uncomfortable zone. And that's on the other side of the uncomfortable zone. That's where real breakthroughs can happen. That's where sustainable breakthroughs can happen. That's where change can happen. But we all have this internal thermostat that says, this is uncomfortable. This is as far as I can go. I can't go above that, right? We have to shatter that thermostat and move past what our perception of uncomfortable is to find the new level of what we're capable of. And through that, you can bring your why to life. And that's the best way to protect yourself. That's the best way to reaffirm it, is to live it, to live your why. Give your why away for free. It's not a secret. Tell it to anyone who will listen. Share it with a smile. Share it with your family. Share it with your friends. Share it with your partner. It doesn't matter. The more you move in this direction, the more you will be able to receive. So the more and more you bring your why to life, the more and more you bring it out of your mind and into reality and into the world, the more the universe, God, lots of G's, little G's, the force, the awakening, whatever you want to believe in, right? The more opportunities you'll be given to live your why, to express your why, to support your why, to strengthen your why. And then that snowball starts to move down the hill, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it gets some inertia and some mass and some momentum behind it. So now when people come with their expectations, you can crash through their expectations. When the doubt slips into your mind, you can crash through the doubts in your mind. You can move past what your perception of uncomfortable is. And the universe is conspiring in your favor. The world, I think we have a default, especially in the American mindset, we have a default mindset that the world is out to get us, or the world is out to make us less than what we are. But the universe is conspiring in our favor. Every life is happening for you, not to you. Every time something happens that you perceive as bad, that's happening for you. There's a lesson to be learned. It's not happening to you, right? That's, if we can shift that mindset, there's immense power in that. Everything is coming together for you in your life. Let your why be the sail that propels you forward. Let your why be the engine that moves you forward in your life. And understanding that the world and the universe is conspiring in your favor. The universe wants you to be successful. The universe wants you to be unbelievable. And we have to accept that for ourselves, to step into our own greatness. Because every single one of us are extraordinary. Every single one of us are chosen. Every single one of us are enough. And we are all gifted. And we all have the opportunity to step into our greatness. And the only thing we need to do is to take a step forward into that. And the sail of our why can propel us when we don't feel like it anymore. One last activity I want you to do over the next week is to ditch the to-do list. So get rid of your to-do list. If you're a list maker, this may be painful, but get rid of your to-do list and start a to-be list. Who do you want to be today? Why do you want to be that person today? How and why do you want to behave in the ways you want to behave? Right? Instead of focusing our lives and our value on what we get done every day, let's focus our lives on our values of who we are and how we behave, and why we're here and how we behave. Not on if I got the report done on time, or not if I did this one thing on time, or not if I did this other thing the way someone else wanted it to be. But rather, if we can shift our mindset to showing up, I'm behaving in a way that's aligned with my why, and I'm behaving in a way that I want to behave. So write those things down, a to-be list instead of a to-do list. You hold the pin to your life. And the last message I have for all of you today is I want you to write a story that's so good, it's almost unbelievable. If people didn't know you, they would be like, no way, that's real. You hold that pen and you can write the story of your life. You can make it however great or however average as you would like it to be. My challenge for you is to write a life and to write a story for your life that is almost unbelievable. And if people didn't know you, they would say that's not possible. Right? But the reason it is possible is because they've seen you do it. And when you're able to write the story of your life and you're able to write your life in a way that's almost unbelievable, not only are you living an unbelievable life, you are inspiring others around you to take the path of choosing an unbelievable life. And there's not much more more of a better feeling than helping others step into their greatness by you simply being the best version of yourself. So that concludes the webinar. I did want to take a moment for all of the athletic trainers in the room. I understand that there are not just athletic trainers in the room, but if you are an athletic trainer and this resonated with you, the next steps that we go through in these things in terms of living your why, how to do those things, how to live your why, how to reaffirm that, how to develop a tribe around in athletic training specifically to support your why. We cover all of those topics and more in the Indiana State Doctor of Athletic Training program. We're proud to be the country's first and only KD accredited doctorate in athletic training program. Our goal is to develop advanced practice leaders And our points of distinction are leadership, advocacy, education, clinical outcomes, and integrative care. And our why, since this is a talk about the why, is to challenge the status quo in athletic training. Simple. We want to challenge the way things have always been done to advance the profession forward. Since you were able to attend today, we have a special offer for you as well. We have free applications in October. So if you go to indstate.edu/DAT, you can find the information, and it takes you to a couple different sites, but you can apply for free. Doesn't cost you anything but a little bit of your time. And hopefully, if you're interested and we continue the process, that you can join us. We'd love to have you in our next cohort starting in summer 2020. So if these things resonated with you today, I really encourage you to take that next step. With that, I am going to turn off the recording. But if I would like to ask you, if you are on social media, to let me know what you thought of the event. I'm on Instagram @Kent Games and on Twitter @GamesKenneth. Please let me know. Please tell your friends about this. If you enjoyed it, encourage them to apply to the program. Encourage them to reach out to me. And if you enjoyed it and you want to have a conversation with me, let's have a conversation. I really want to get to know you and add value to your life more than just this webinar. So let's have a conversation so we can talk about how I can add value to your life and how you can add value to mine. And together we can give more for the world around us. So thank you so much for attending. I will turn off the recording and stick around for some questions and answers if anyone has them.